Hello everybody and welcome to Alternative Interactions. I'm Gary, and here today you find me on a walk, and it's the part 2 from yesterday. I've done it back to back. So beautiful birds singing, it's lovely, isn't it? Next to a beautiful, let's give this old oak tree a lovely, beautiful oak tree. Look at that, absolutely stunning. What a beautiful place to be, hey? So yeah, this is the part 2 to yesterday's show. I haven't even decided what to call it yet. So please like, share and subscribe. Really appreciate what you're doing. And again, I'll try and disable the adverts on this one for the first few hours of dropping it. So those of you get on it early, shouldn't have any midterm roll adverts. Anyway, we were talking about the issues between Izzy, the country who's just bombed Iran. Izzy versus I is where we are going with that one. And obviously yesterday I was talking about the KM, the mafia of the Khazarian, who are the name stealers fundamentally, and the exilarchies, who are the exiled tiny hats that went from around sort of like Africa, North Africa and that area, and escaped into Persia. They probably came over all the way from Europe as well, actually, you know, to be fair. They would have come from far and wide. So what I think we're beginning to see is a power struggle between the two clans, two separate, very separate people. And I'm sure they have exactly the same kind of rituals. You know, the exilarchies would have been the ones that wrote the Talmud, the Jewish book, via the help of the burning bush. And I believe from my research, the burning bush is an effigy of Janus, just another face of the actor Janus, the god of this realm. And again, I've said before that I've been doing a lot of research into this, and I really have. So Blackbird, beautiful, aren't they? Lovely song. So yeah, we're at a stage now where we have the new kids on the block, the new money, you know, beginning to push their luck. They've taken over the UK, they've taken over America, taken over most of Europe. In fact, they're taking over most of the world. But there's a little castle, a little fortress in the middle of the sand that's called Iran, was Persia, where the exilarchies live. The old money, the old school. And it's very interesting when you start looking at stuff. So we'll look at America. When they want to dish out their controllers, the KM's masters form of democracy and justice, they don't just go in, they make sure they have a base close by, or bases close by, where they can strike from. None of these happenings has happened overnight. None of it's off the hoof, off the cuff. It's none of it. This is some of the biggest, deepest kind of programming and planning that you have ever, beyond your comprehension, beyond mine. You know, any of you guys are looking at the Q kind of stuff. Well, this is Q on steroids over a longer term, and the Exarchy or the KM in this case have planned their revenge for a couple of thousand years nearly, certainly 1,000 years plus with them coming online. So for 1,000 years they have been working on almost taking over from the Exarchy. And don't forget, the Exarchy would have had little fallouts, and certain members of the Exarchy would have gone over to the KM and vice versa. You know, it's a very fluid thing. It's not black and white. There's no solid lines drawn here. So there would have been skullduggery from the beginning. So from when the Exarches entered into Persia around 560 BC, before Christ, from that period onwards, the skullduggery would have been going on and the infighting between them. And it could well be that one of them went over, or a group of them went over and created the name stealers of the KM. You know, all of that is on the table, so don't discard any of that. You know, you've got to think outside the box on this one, and it's not, well, I'm telling you, it's not black and white. It really isn't black and white. But what we do kind of have is that one group has been more successful than another, and to attack that group you need a base. And so the Balfour Agreement that created the state of Izzy and the contrivedness of World War II and all the lies from World War II and what went on were all part of the system to remove the freedom of speech, the questioning of, and allow the three pass into creating that base that was closer to that castle in the sand, the Exarches. And the Exarches, I think, are fully aware that Izzy, the country, controls America. Fully. There's no doubt. Absolutely, fully, 100% controls it. And so their options have been getting fewer and fewer. It's a really bright day today. I stand under here for a little while and just chat to you rather than walk. There we go, look, beautiful tree behind me. Yeah, so their options have been getting fewer and fewer. They're kind of, I hate to say it, but rats cornered. And so what we're going to see, actually I'll walk back the other way a bit, we've got plenty of time. So what we're going to see, what we're seeing, or what we're seeing is, fundamentally, a power struggle. And this power struggle is about the control of this realm. But who's actually in control when we come to the reset? They're all fully aware of where we are biblically. So the second horseman of the apocalypse is upon us currently, and we're halfway through that term, something like that, a third of the way through. First horseman of the apocalypse of 2020, Apollo Pharmakia, shooting toxins from his bow with his wife Corona, wearing a white coat. But again, the book was a book of spells, cursed. They wrote it in cursed spell, create the curse of the spell, to then enter that into the collective consciousness, so the collective consciousness could turn that into a reality. This is how manifestation happens. They understand how laws work in this realm. They understand it all. Because unlike us, they keep detailed records. They have all the knowledge and all the technology from previous resets. Because as I said before, they're the ones that have gone underground in their bunkers, and after the reset they've come back up, taken over. You know, could almost say, if you wanted to look at it in that respect, Adam and Eve, the Adamu people that came up from Eden, where they met Eve. Eve is heaven. And the Adamu people came up from under the ground. Were they a previous race of tiny hats, or were they used by the tiny hats to shove up onto the land, to set the infrastructure up for them to then come up and then take it all over? It's up to you guys to think about that one, or not. So we've seen Izzy, the country Izzy, attack country I. And I see statements that America supports Israel even though they didn't condone it. It's all a stage, it's all game. It's all game. It's a rich man's game. And when you observe but don't absorb, remember you've got to observe this stuff and don't absorb it, you can see it for what it is. Am I emotionally attached to any of this? Not at all. I find it fascinating. It's part of the story, part of the history. But I think we should also look at, history-wise, how we got here. Because there was two opportunities, sorry, do apologise. There was two opportunities, got itchy nose. I had a fly go up it. There we go. I had two opportunities in the world to stop this from happening, fundamentally. Two. Both in Roman times. Obviously before the power came total and they took over fully. So in 60 AD, 60 years after supposedly Christ's birth, we have the Jewish nation declaring war on Rome. Now the Jews have been coin clipping. It's a fun fact actually. Why do you think coins have serrated edges these days? Well, they have serrated edges because the Jews used to clip the edges of the coins. And because they were rough cast, you could never tell if they had been clipped or not. And so when the Jews got the money, they would clip a certain amount of the coin off to make new coins out of it for themselves. So that's why I have serrated edges these days, because the serrated edge would show very clearly that the coin had been clipped. There's some missing. It's a lot harder to create a coin like that. So Let's go back into history in the Roman times. So in 60 AD, Judaism, the Jews, Judea, declared war on Rome. And they declared war on Rome, and it was, I think, 70 AD to 73 AD. There was a war which ended up culminating in Jerusalem. Now, Jerusalem was a province, it wasn't an important place, and it certainly wasn't the stronghold, but of course it was used as a deflection, so the real power hubs were not touched. Okay, smoke and mirrors. I mean, if we're talking about a tarot card here, we're talking about the magician. You know, but there was a war in 70 AD. Emperor, it begins with V, Vespasian, something like that. I can never pronounce it. He actually had a Jewish wife until he murdered her in a rage on what they were doing. He found out what she was up to, what they're up to, and it didn't go down very well with him. I think she was pregnant at the time. Anyway, I digress. This war has got key significance to the future, coming up all the way to Germany and what happened in World War I and II. Key significance. Remember, these people have very long memories, and they hold a grudge like no other. And they don't work in days and weeks, they work in decades and years, centuries. Now, I want to say it was the 10th column, but fundamentally there was in Rome they had a column, call them the 10th, I don't know if it is or not, I can't remember now. Now I've said it, I'm doubting myself. But these were made up of Germans, and the average centurion was around 5'2", 5'1", and the German column were 6-footers, and the elite of the elite, as Jason would call it, the stormtrooper of the Star Wars franchise. And what they did is Rome sent them down there, and they spent 3 years, so 70 AD to 73 AD, and in Persia, not Persia, I tell a lie, in Palestine, we'll call it Palestine, the Ottoman Empire, because it really wasn't then. You know, we call it a modern name now, but it wasn't. But in the Israel area, they went in and decimated the area. 400 villages and settlements were destroyed. And this is the kicker. This is the one you've got to understand. This is the one that always triggers people. They razed Jerusalem. And what do we mean by razed Jerusalem? What we're talking about is every single stone, brick, building was razed to the ground. A scorched earth policy, in fact. There was nothing left. So anything that had existed pre 73 AD was wiped from the face of the earth. 2.5 million Jews passed during this operation, and I think something like 50,000 slaves. Obviously female slaves were taken. All done by the German stormtroopers. So you can kind of see why we had the issues with Germany later on and what was going on. And if you understand your history and you know what I'm talking about, you can see exactly and go, you're getting an aha moment. Ah, so that's why they did that. That's why they created this. That's why this narrative was placed there. You know. I also think from memory that I think it was that war, the 70 AD, 70 73 AD war, was also the one where we had the crucifying of, and I think they every so far along there was a crucifixion, and it was the J people, tiny hats, that were crucified, and they led all the way to Rome. So you could go from Rome to there following the crucified people. Really not a nice thing, really quite a dark time, but I can only imagine the poking of the bear that was required from Rome to do such a thing. Now, obviously, Jerusalem was rebuilt to a level, recolonised. But in 133, so 133 AD? Yeah. Emperor Hadrian was having the same problems. So it didn't take many more years, did it? So I'm sure it's 133 AD from my brain, and the war went on for several years to 138 or something like that. But there was a major war again with the tiny hats. And the tiny hats kicked ass, to be fair, initially, and most of the legions were destroyed and killed, which displeased Emperor Hadrian immensely. He pulled his top commander, who happened to be in the UK, in England, and he pulled him out of the UK, and they did a deal with all the slaves that if they fought for Rome, there'd be freedom. Kept their word for once, and they went after him again. And again, there was a scorched earth policy, and so what had been rebuilt out of the ashes was completely destroyed again. Every single brick was smashed in Jerusalem. There was nothing left again. So that's twice, 2 times. Come out to the sunny bit now. I do apologise if the screen's not great, but it's real life. They can't fake this on an AI bot. So twice it was destroyed, Jerusalem. But Hadrian lost his sense of humour on this one, and he went after them. And they retreated back to Persia, to their stronghold. So at that time, Persia was the stronghold of Jerusalem, and now it's the KM who have control of that, I believe. So you can see now how the switch has gone, how it's all changed. But so yeah, we then get this switch over, and what we see is that Hadrian goes after them because he wants to finally stop the problem of the tiny hat, because he understands the big picture. But fundamentally, he got stopped in what's Egypt today, and he ran out of money, he ran out of funds, and so the Exilarchy got away. Fundamentally, the controlling power of that time got away. And it wasn't many years later around 143, 145 AD, again from memory, where all the Masonic lodges were created and all the power mechanisms were created, all run by tiny hats to get their spider's web infiltration into where we are today. So I hope that kind of makes some sense. Part one and part two. We're talking two individual groups fundamentally fighting for the same deal. Not a nice deal either. And so the conflict, I mean, like, I'm doing this back on back. It's going to be dropped tomorrow, and a lot could happen tonight. Well, nothing could happen, but a lot could happen. But observe it. Don't absorb it. There's no need to absorb any of this. Because once you understand the history, the basic history behind it, you know, you get it. What's very interesting is that Jerusalem was rebuilt, obviously, after the sacking of it and destruction of it. So, in case you haven't really got to the question and the crux of what I'm going to say now, I'm going to say it out loud. When a site has been destroyed and flattened twice, within a short period of time, and then rebuilt by the Greeks or whoever, can't remember now, but rebuilt. So it's been rebuilt twice, destroyed twice, rebuilt twice. Is there any credence? Is there any authenticity in the supposed holiness of certain buildings and certain places within that area? The story of Jesus and people going to that area to see where that event happened could only at best be a reconstruction, because it was destroyed twice. You know me, I'll ask a question, I'll ask the obvious question. We getting played? Somebody playing us? Create a book? Make this book the most important book in the world? Use this book as a control mechanism? Get people to externalise their power, their sovereign power, give it away. Very clever, isn't it? Very clever. And so, I don't think we should have any fear over what's happening in the Middle East. If you take the isometric projections of Jason, I'll stop here because it's shady here, and you can see me to say goodbye. A bit of greenery in the background. There you go. Look. Yeah, if you look at, sorry, I've got spiders all over my face. It's itchy. Proper spiders, not the ant's nest I get sometimes in the head. So when we look at this, the isometric projections of when it was destroyed previously and everything else like that, we certainly could see a bigger conflict in around 2030, 2033 for sure, or maybe not. But this is posturing, and this is, I think, us seeing the two different tiny hat organisations falling from one side to the other, and the new money and the fact that it controls London, the Vatican, Washington, DC. You know, I don't think that is the Exarches anymore. So we've got some very interesting times coming up, but also I don't think we've got to have any fear over any of it. You know, does it really affect us? Sure, they'll pretend that oil prices are going to go up and make some money out of it. This is a bankers' war again. This is the banks. This is the banks trying to make money. The system's about to collapse. They're out of money. They're out of money, and what can they do? What can they do? War's a playbook. Whenever they're skint, whenever they're about to run out of money, they always go to war, and this is what they're trying to do. You know, the U and the R situation, war, playbook number one, always has been, always will be, and this is what we're seeing now. So yeah, it could escalate, but in America, Europe, Australia, etc., we really what difference does it make to us? It's our masters flexing their muscles. That's all it is. But it's going to be very interesting to see which way the sword falls. Now with that, I hope I made sense. Please like, share and subscribe, and thank you very much for listening to this part 2, and I shall catch up with you guys very soon. Bye bye everyone.